GWS, they were in town today. Dave Matthews, their CEO, met with Adam Uze and Adam Kingsley about the coaching job. He also met for the third time with Alastair Clarkson. I spoke to him about the meetings and what they're looking for.
Yeah, it was a good discussion. Obviously, we've got a vacancy and we're going through a process and speaking to a number of candidates, and clearly with Alastair's background, you have to catch up with him, and it was a really good conversation.
You are going through a process with other candidates. What is it about Alastair Clarkson that would be such a great result for GWS? Clearly his ambassadorial role as well as his coaching performances.
Well, his track record speaks for itself, and obviously with such a profile in the game, that certainly adds some appeal, but you do want to appoint the right coach, which is why we're going through a process. So, yeah, we'll continue discussions with Alastair, and we've also got a number of interviews going on with other candidates.
When you're looking at somebody like an Alastair Clarkson, the ambassadorial role really comes into stark contrast, doesn't it? It's different to another type of coach. Is that something you'd look to ask the AFL for some support?
I think we would. I think it reminds you of the days when Lee Matthews went to Brisbane Lions and what the sort of halo effect was there. But I think first and foremost what we've got to do is, we've got a very good incumbent at the moment in Mark McVeigh. There's a number of other senior assistants around the competition that we're talking to as well, and then there's Alastair Clarkson, and all those things need to go into the mix. But certainly his profile is something that's pretty significant.
And with somebody like Alastair Clarkson coming off the back of an amazing career, it's also important though that he works for you. What are the things that whoever coaches at GWS need to bring to the table?
Yeah, I think it's all.
Wanting to live in Sydney is one of them.
Yeah, I think people have got to be up for the challenge. I mean, I've been there as the CEO now for 10 years. You've got to want to live in Sydney, and you've got to be wanting to grow the game and take on a lot of additional responsibilities that may not be things you need to do at other clubs. So, that's a consideration, I'm sure. But I think, we're there not just to try to be a successful footy club, we've got to grow the game, so they're considerations.
North Melbourne having a real go at Alastair as well. Is it a situation where you have to sort of get in first, or are you just prepared to play the long game and get the best result for your club?
Yeah, we don't feel under any pressure or time pressure at all, or pressure from North Melbourne. They'll do what they want to do. We're pretty clear on what our process is, and we're just still working through it. So what they do is a matter for them.
And final question, as you look at your list profile, do you think is a rebuild, or is this something that you can really just go the next step again and rekindle?
I think, I'd see it as a reset, because I don't think it's a rebuild. We've got a lot of talent on our list. I think we've probably underachieved this year in terms of what our expectations are, and I think the competition's so even now that I think we can bounce back pretty quickly.
Dave Matthews speaking to me late today. Guys, I took a lot out of that they're already talking to the AFL about ambassadorial roles, etc., etc. They're right into him. Now, the news from North Melbourne is they too have already spoken to James Henderson, that is the manager of Ricky Ponting. They now want to get in front of Ricky, and they have earmarked him. They've said he is the man that they want to get now. More on what's happening at North Melbourne in a few moments' time. Let's discuss Clarko.
Ross, can I put to you about the ambassadorial role? Because that's a big thing, because the advantage that puts them in front of North Melbourne. So that you'd want to have that pretty clear now, whether you're going to get that extra money, because that would play a big part in what you can offer to Alastair, and also how would North Melbourne feel with that advantage that the Giants could have financially, if that's a part of it?
Yeah, well, it's a great point. The ambassadorial role will sit outside the soft cap. But I think it's needed when we invested as an AFL community so much into Gold Coast and GWS. So the halo effect, I think he's right. You bring a great tactical coach and a coach of the club. But as long as Sheedy's there, the ability to cut through, and I've lived in Sydney for 3 years, and it's developed since 2005, but the ability to cut through in the western suburbs, the west of Sydney, needs a big name, isn't it? If they can get Clarkson, because it's more than coaching the club. And not only that, you also have to invest into that player group, because what the first group did, Sheedy and Gubby Allen and Craig Lambert, Green and those guys stayed because they built a real community within the club. They invested, they put resources in. So it's a bigger challenge than if you just go down to Arden Street. But if you're Clarko, you want the competitive tension. You want motivated buyers. So he's in a sweet spot. If you can get the support of the AFL, I think it's a smart move. I don't know the talent on the list, but you take Dave Matthews at his word.
The soft cap next year, Eddie, is $6.95 million, and there's talk around that Alastair would want to bring potentially a high-performance coach and also the kicking coach like David Rath, like he did at Hawthorn. So you think he's going to be $1 million plus. And then you're also going to have obviously these two, so you get in the 2 million plus already. And I'm not with Dave in terms of their list. That it's a young, talented list. I think their list is in a real poor situation with paying too much for too few, and the depth isn't that good. So development is critical.
I've done some research in the background, just speaking to recruiters and list managers. They've really over-indexed on midfielders because of where the rules were at. But now the stand, mark and flow, they've lost their key position from when they were at their best, like they had Patton, and Cameron was a huge loss for them. Those sort of... But if you've got the talent, you can trade in and out. They could be nimble and reset that.
Don't
with
forget
someone
one
like
thing.
Clarkson.
You can pay a tax. You can pay a tax if you want to.
Yeah.
Next.
Well, with North Melbourne, Ricky Ponting, Eddie. So I want to talk about Ricky Ponting, and he had this to say over the last 24 hours.
Hopefully I'll catch up with him this week, Al. Hopefully I can sit down with him and... no, look, yeah, absolutely. Like, if you're looking for the right people at the right times, the most successful coach and noted as best coach in the AFL for the last 10 or 12 years, there's a lot worse decisions you can make than to go, flat out to try and bring someone like him back to where it all began.
Here's the difference. The Giants are going through a process. I think it's a genuine process. They're not sure whether Clarko's their man because they're going to interview whether it's a young coach they bring up with 2 or 3 others, whereas North Melbourne, to me, that suggests that Clarko's the one we want. So if I was anybody else, I'd wait and see if Clarko gets the job or not, in my opinion, whereas there's a process at the Giants.
Well, I think that's hard. I think there's processes. There was no process for Mick Moldhouse. When I went to the Dockers, there was no process. Yeah. Young coach, untried, certainly with St Kilda. But Clarko, to me, has jumped all the hurdles. They just need to hear from him. Are you up to be an ambassador? Are you up to do the wider things, or do you just want to coach a football team? And I think if he answers those questions in the affirmative and they want him and the AFL can pay, it should be done. I don't think he goes through a process with respect.
For either. But I'm not sure the Giants see him as the number one and no one else. So.
No, I think he's number one if he answers their questions on commitment to more than coaching the team.